very special edition of The Pod Has Spoken, our Merge Extravaganza, season 48. And we have last season's breakout superstar, Andy, all the way from South Korea. Andy, what are you doing in South Korea?
Oh, I'm just on a trip with my family, so this is how it worked out.
How
But
rich.
I couldn't say no to you. I'm taking time out of my amazing trip
I know.
to be on this podcast.
I appreciate that, and I also was like, he shouldn't take time. But then I was like, their internet's so fast there that maybe he should. And this is a great episode, and we've had fun. We had fun with you last season on the podcast. So
yes, so I heard. But yes, I'm excited to be here. I've always been a fan of you, Tyson. But also, I have to say, I am the biggest Ringer fanboy to ever be on Survivor. I love the Ringer.
Really?
Riley, I followed your content since before COVID when you were calling Tony the GOAT with those articles.
Ooh.
Those were really good. Shout out to Mallory Rubin. Shout out to Joanna Robinson. I'm so excited to be part of this network. So in this small capacity. So let's get into it. This is super fun.
Yeah.
Wow. Love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's great. I didn't even know what the Ringer was until they called. Not really. They're winners at war coverage. Mallory would tweet at me and I was like, finally some respect from people that matter. And so
well, my question for you, are you invited to the Ringer holiday parties? In what capacity do you have access to this stuff?
Riley, do I have access to any of that?
I mean, there really haven't been Ringer holiday parties, so the answer is no.
Juliet, a long time ago, told me that if I was ever in Maine, I could stay at her house there. So
there we go.
That's pretty big.
You're in.
That's pretty big. Yeah, so I think I'm in. But shout out to the entire Ringer team. I get that quite a bit, actually, Riley. I probably don't tell you and Ashleigh enough how a lot of Survivor contestants are big Ringer fans, but Andy, the biggest so far. Let's get into all things Merge, where people are landing, who's going to move where, what's going to happen, our predictions, and based off of nothing but our love and hundreds of thousands of hours of viewed and played time in this game. I wanted to start off with the factions that kind of materialized last episode at the Merge, but the Siva group is already chopping each other down, right? So Charity's gone, and so I don't know if that's going to last. Will the Integrity group, is that what we call them? The Integrity team?
That's what we
are they going to last? Are we going to Team Honesty? Are they going to last? How is this going to happen?
That is the big question. I think that is the headline of this episode, that this group of 6 people have come together. And it's an interesting combination of people from original tribe connections and the swap. But I think it's got a lot of, if you analyze everyone in a game, all of the strongest connections that have been established are in some level a part of this alliance. And the people left out are the ones who are kind of the free agents, if you will, or the looser pieces. So I'm fascinated with where this is going to go, because unlike some other big alliances that meet up at the Merge, this one seems to probably have more legs. But it's the classic question, if a big alliance comes together and steamrolls a couple votes, at some point, when is the paranoia going to set in, or people itching to make a big move? And it comes down to how each of those players want to play their end game. So
or realize that they're on the bottom. At some point in a group of 6, you realize you're on the bottom and you have to make a move unless you want to be 6th or 5th place.
Right.
And so are they going to be able to keep this even Steven, we're all equal together? That doesn't, it's not like a poker tournament where you could get to final 6 and chop the prize money. You don't get to do that.
But the problem is, the problem is that they've set it up. The way that they've set up this alliance is based off of the ethos that they're going to not backstab each other. And so they're setting themselves up to, at the risk of looking like hypocrites, if they go and then make a move too early, it's a big unknown as to how it's going to go if that's how people are really thinking. And so I have my eye on the players who are saying that they're all in on this idea, but in their confessionals have other ideas. I think those people
Kyle.
are an advantage. Kyle that's the classic. That's the example. Yeah.
Is Kyle the only one there that's really Shaheen, I guess.
Gotta be Shaheen too.
Shaheen and Kyle a little bit are ready to make a move if they have to. They've said they're in, but they're not in, which already is a fracture enough. Because if they were really playing with honesty and integrity, and it was 6, you get down to 6, and then the 5 say, okay, Andy, you're number 6. We're voting you out next.
Mm-hmm.
That gives you opportunity to scramble, to do whatever you got to do, to play your shot in the dark. It throws you can't ever tell people they're going. So they can't they're never going to be able to fully play with full honesty.
Yeah. Well, what's the classic line that people say in this setup? They say, oh, we're just going to get to the 6 and then we're going to duke it out. Then we're going to start playing. Yeah. But I think to get to that point, if you're going to go all the way to 6, then you have to start utilizing these, dark arts of deception, lying, and everything that they're sort of setting themselves up as being against. And so they are, like David, for example, I think he's the most all in on this idea that, hey, the time of backstabbing is over and we're going to sort of change the game.
Yeah.
But if he wants to actually win, then he's going to have to make the very difficult decisions that are baked into Survivor, which are easier to do if you know from the start that, it is just a game and you give yourself free license to do whatever you want to do. But if you're setting yourself up like this, then I think you might be in a rude awakening as you go through the merge. But I mean, we'll see. We'll see what they end up doing because they seem to really, really believe this right now.
Yeah, the 3 or 4 of them believe it all the way. David, Eva, and Joe, I think, don't. They haven't shown any doubt in this system. They think that they're going to change it. I also think that you look at this, and it's like any other alliance. If you're leading the alliance, you're selling the Kool-Aid that benefits you the most. So David, to try and get people to not strategize, he probably realizes the game might be a little over his head in some situations, and this is probably his best chance. I remember on the challenge, I was just like, let's all have all the physical threats stick together and let's not. And they were like, that sounds great. And they were like, the people online were like, that's the stupidest idea ever, because then you have to compete against them. I was like, yeah, but I can beat all the physical threats. So it's not, for me, it works out. For the lesser physical threat, that's a problem. But for me, it's fine. And I think this is also like for David here, it's trying to wrangle people into playing the game that he feels comfortable and feels like he can maintain, and convincing people that that's the way it should be. So I don't see it going too far, honestly. And there's already the fractures of Kyle and Shaheen willing to bounce. So,
well, the thing about Shaheen, so do you know about Shaheen's backstory with Survivor? And that he was the alternate for Survivor 46.
Yeah.
And so from my point of view, I was in the same casting cycle. So I had my eye out for the alternate SD with the big beard. He caused such a kerfuffle in the Survivor 46 preseason. And I think everyone had it in their mind that he was going to come in and be this huge villain. And he was going to be, causing chaos and be a cutthroat player. But I feel like when we watch what he's done so far in Survivor 48, I mean, I'm loving what he's doing. I feel like he's such a good storyteller. He's so good in confessionals, but has he been that villainous? Has he been, from my point of view, I feel like he's been one of the most loyal players so far. And he's been down the line for his alliance. He was all in on the California girls. And I think he might be a little bit more bought into this than Kyle, right? But we have
for sure more bought in than Kyle.
Yeah.
I just feel like because he had that aura about him for 46, and because he's a student of the game and all of those things, I feel like he has to understand that. And he's, in confessional said he's going to play the game so many times. So I don't think he would, in a heartbeat, or less than a heartbeat, I think he would jump ship if he had to.
Wait, but why, Andy, why was he assumed to be a villain? Was it just the beard? Or was it was he kind of looking around shiftily in the cafeteria or something?
this larger than life character was created just based off of interviews where the other Survivor 46 contestants were saying all types of things about his behavior and his look and what he was doing. And I just envisioned this like giant cartoon pirate who's going to come in and cause as much chaos as possible. And I was like very afraid of that. And so I think from what I can remember, a couple people from 48 put that together, but most people didn't. But he still left a big impression. So I just think he's one of those big aura sort of players. But I'm very curious to see where he goes, like working within this alliance, because I do think he's down to be loyal to Joe for a long time. That seems to be the person who he sees as his number one. But he also probably, like everyone else, has a keen awareness that he might not be Joe's number one ally. And so those type of things can really be the cracks in a giant alliance, especially as they get more comfortable if they keep, doing sort of down the line votes.
Yeah. And that's the thing, as you get down the line and you're seeing these tighter bonds than what you have with certain people, you have to take action first. And I think that's coming sooner than later, honestly, for Joe and Eva. Like, you can't let something that powerful go that long. Let's talk about Kyle and Camilla.
Oh my God. I've been loving their games. They have been the highlights so far strategically. The one move that they pulled off, people are calling it Operation Guyana. And listen, I subscribe to that because they were pulling some of the similar moves, about really building a world around the other players and really having them spun around. And I think that's the most lethal thing you can have in a game. If you have a partner who you have that telepathic link with, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't think that they're nearly done pulling moves like this together. And what's so good for them is, first of all, Kyle, I would have to put him in the best spot on the entire tribe because he is the person who feels in the middle of this dominant alliance that's coming together, but he has his other options and he's keenly aware of it. Whereas Camilla, I think that she's on the outside, but that might be the best place for her because if he's on the in and she's on the out, then they can compare notes. And right. I think that's going to be the game plan that they have set out because everyone left out of this major alliance, I don't know where they're going. They have to find their own place in this tribe because they feel like a bunch of, just strategically, like a bunch of stragglers and misfits, and their bonds are not nearly as strong as the people on the inside of the alliance. So I do think that if a move needs to be made, Kyle and Camilla can be the ones who know where all these votes are going and have all the leverage.
Yeah, I think so too. Are they going to be able to stay distant the whole time? Because that is a common strategy. It just, you always grow suspect of someone like, Andy, you and I, we're best friends. Let's stay distant from each other. And then I see you talking to somebody else. Like, maybe we're not best friends. And then I go to you, I'm like, I need some assurity that we are best friends. You're like, oh, no, we for sure are. And then I see you talking with the same person again. And I'm like, no, like, there's so much in the game of Survivor. It's moving so fast and all the time that to stay that distant the entirety of the game is highly unlikely.
Yeah. It could go wrong both ways. I think what we see a lot are people who feel like they're being undercover and, hey, let's not pretend we're best friends. But they can't help but just joke and camp together. It's just so
sleep
obvious
next to each other, share food. And you're like, you guys are doing like the Lady and the Tramp spaghetti noodle thing.
No, literally.
Like, we
and
can
that
see
happens. Yeah, that is usually how it goes down. The other way it could go wrong is something I went through on Survivor 47, where going from Gada to the mergatory situation, our game plan was to separate, like divide and conquer. But although we, for example, me, Sam, and Sierra were just in together on a vote, there wasn't full trust, right? And so when you don't have the most tight foundation, and then you go do this thing at the mergatory, it's very easy to lose track of each other. And after a day passes by and you haven't checked in, you're like, was that real? Is this really still happening? Or am I just left to my own devices? And so those are the two ways it could go wrong. And so for Kyle and Camilla, what's great is that I do feel very confident they have the right mix where they feel like they don't have to check in very often. That's the sense that I get, but that they're just on the same page on an innate level. And I think the best thing you can do is find someone that you have that chemistry with, because then you can be covert. And the longer you covert, the more lethal you're going to be as a duo.
Yeah. I think it's the most lethal combination you can have in the game is if you can have your number one in the group that you're not in and vice versa.
Yeah.
So I think they're very powerful. Let's talk about some of the stragglers here and their chances. We just lost Charity, who was Mitch's number one, I think, in a way. Where does Mitch go from here? Is he going to get picked up? Is he honest? And does he have enough integrity that he's going to get swooped up into that? Or is he just going to flounder? What is his play?
So I feel for Mitch because it wasn't exactly the same, but I feel like I felt pretty much the same after the mergatory vote on Survivor 47. This is when Rome went. And I was in on the Rome plan, but what I was not in on was that I was the backup plan. And so you do feel left out.
Brutal.
As soon as everyone comes together, you feel like you're hitting your stride with these new relationships. And then the first vote, you basically feel left out. That is a wake-up call, to say the least. So Mitch, it was very clear. Even though there's like this split though that happened, it was super clear that he did not know what was happening. He did not know that Charity was leaving. He could have been maybe the only person left out to that extent because they were so tight as a duo. So he really has to work it. Like you have to, if you're on the bottom, there's really nowhere to go but up. But I think what he was banking on was his Siva connections. So he really felt good about Kyle and David and then Chrissy on the swap. But now, I mean, he has to be second guessing all of that. But those are, I mean, what's kind of good for the Kyles and Davids is that I don't know where else he has to turn because we just haven't seen him develop the strongest relationships outside of Siva. He voted for Say, on that one tribal council. So that's kind of the disadvantage that a lot of these players who are left out have is that unless they can recognize this at once and sort of come up with the rational idea that maybe they need to come up with a counter alliance or something like that. Right now, they're not as connected as all of the most connected people who are connected with each other.
I mean, they do kind of have the numbers if they could get together, but we have Cedric and Say, but Say, I don't know why the rogue vote on
for him.
Cedric. I think she's just going to keep voting for him. Just pay back the rest of the season as long as she's there. She's tired of Cedric voting for her and flubbing everything. So part of me is just like, Say's just going to say, and she's just going to keep doing her thing. I don't think they're coming together, but Star and Cedric had a moment, and Star is kind of emerging in these moments where people are feeling down on themselves as the hype man that you need, hype person that you need in these moments where you Cedric's not really great at challenges, and especially if you don't know Andy. Look, I don't want to make this about your comparison.
Let me hear it.
You said yourself you thought you were going to crush these challenges, and you get out there.
I thought I was going to be a lot better than I was. By day 10, I was like, let me update my thoughts about this. I'm not going to challenge.
How do you? How do you do that? How do you change your mindset, assuming that you're going to be physically one of the better people out there, to then realizing that you just don't have it, whatever it is needed for the challenges, which are these carnival games, and you can't fully know. How do you change your mindset from because a lot of people, and even me, I feel like even if I was failing at these challenges, I would still show up to each one being like, I fucking got this one. I know I've got this one. Like, I'm not losing. I'm not changing my train of thought, but I think you have to.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Survivor tests a lot of skills and combination of skills that you just really don't face in real life. And so you don't have a full level of understanding of how good you're going to do with the challenges. And so because of that, and the pressure is so high, if you get off to a bad start, it just becomes a head case thing, like really, really quickly. And if you, fail, like whether it's your tribe losing challenges or you're personally doing like silly stuff like I was doing, you're just like, what else could go wrong? You walk into the next challenge, you're like, okay, how is this going to be a disaster? And that's really not the headspace you want to be in if you want to succeed in these challenges, because a lot of them they test, putting yourself on the spot and being in high pressure situations and then just doing something weird for the very first time and just killing it. So I 100% feel for Cedric. But I really love that moment with Star. And this was a breakout episode from Star for me. I think it didn't take until like this episode for us to really see her shine, no pun intended, but like her personality is like really coming out. She had multiple really, really amazing moments that was just Star being Star. Not the least of which was that moment with Cedric. And you can't overstate how amazing that is to have someone who can lift you up when you are in that pit of despair. I could use Star in the beginning of my season. That would have been great. Everything could have been different, right? But so like I think she's really awesome, right? And if, like we said, like the people who are not in on this Power Six, they need to find other connections and they need to start coming up with their own sort of game plans. And this Cedric and Star relationship, it really could be something. And I think if they were, smart, they would really just use that moment to actually be a duo, because I don't know who else they're trusting right now. And so I think moments like that, when you go to a mergatory situation, are very key.
Could Star and Eva fully work together after their moment last week?
That's a good question. So I think it's worked out very well for Star, this decision to give Eva the idol.
Unbeknownst to her. I don't think her reasons were that, but it's worked out phenomenal.
But she's following her gut, it's like it was an intuitive decision in the moment. And I think if you're out there and you're so immersed in the game, that is kind of like there are so many different components that go into making a decision. Like she could have fought that, at least part of her brain, although she was probably just swept up in the moment. It has worked out for her, right? Although she is giving one of the few advantages in this game in the hands of people who are more in power than her. What's good is it's completely shifted the target off of her. And what I would hope for Star is that did build at least something with her former Lagi members. They were ready to ship her out very early on the original Lagi, right? So could that be an opening to wriggle her way into the power structure if Eva and Joe look at her in a different light? That is one thing. But that really did work out for her, because there's no target on her at all, and I think she has the sort of wiggle room to move now.
Yeah, I don't think the Power Alliance is going to be able to cut her very easy, because I don't know if Eva will be able to really target somebody that has shown loyalty and love. Joe also has
kind of none of them can,
stated
right?
how difficult it is to do that. And so I feel like if you have great perception, good reads, Star's going to see the writing on the wall before they target her or before.
Yeah.
Her. And so,
one of the whole premise of your alliance is we are the loyalty, honesty, integrity alliance. You can't target the person that gave one of your members an idol.
Right.
You can if they're out of the alliance, or if you convince yourself that they're not honest.
Yeah. The other thing, though, is that this alliance is built on two things. It was built on honesty and integrity, which, I mean, I have my own thoughts about that in the game of Survivor. But the other half of it is that we
what
are
the
strong.
thoughts?
So I don't know. The way I see Survivor, and this is just my perspective, and I really appreciate that someone like David is coming in here into the new era and, has his own perspective on
coaching it up a little bit.
Coaching it up a little bit. And that's kind of a breath of fresh air in some degree, right? But, I don't know. If this were Survivor Borneo, then it was open to negotiation, like what Survivor is, what this game is all about. But I think it's well established that, as Jeff puts it, this is a game of deception and it's a game of human poker. And so I think it's kind of a sign that you're just kind of new to Survivor. I think David's only seen a few seasons. And there's a natural inclination for some people to be like, you know what, Yeah, I'm better than this game. Like, I don't have to lie and deceive, and I'm going to change the game. I'm going to revolutionize the game. He's not the first person to say this. I think Coach said that as he entered Tocantins, right?
Yes.
But I don't know. If it is poker, it's just kind of funny to me that like it would be like someone entering the poker world for the first time and being like, I'm going to change the game. I am not going to bluff. Not going to bluff. I'm going to play poker with honesty and integrity, and I'm going to win the World Series of Poker, and I'm going to change the game. And it's not like, to me, that's just, you sound a little confused.
I mean, if you get the right cards every time, you could.
It's theoretically possible. Not very likely though, right?
Yeah, not very likely.
But yeah. So I do find I struggle with people who very strongly mix the ethics and the morals with the game that everyone's signed up to do. But Survivor is really fascinating in the sense that people bring that into the game, and it isn't just poker or just chess, because we've seen this season that the human element is, baked into the design of the show as well, and is super, super important part of it. But that's my take on it. And David seems like the kind of guy who's like open to a civil debate about this if he wants to reach out to me. But the other thing, what I wanted to say was the other sort of pillar that this alliance is built on is that we are the challenge competitors. We're the strong people. And when you're like that, and when you have that in the mix, I feel like they look at each other like maybe like a sports team or something. And if they are built off of challenge dominance and challenge excellence, and the other players are not as strong and can't prove themselves in that way, then they can't fit into the alliance. You know what I mean? So it would be really hard for Star to sort of, maybe Star will. She was really good at this challenge, right? This challenge emergatory, but she was not perceived to be one of the strong people. That's what Eva was thinking all the way back on Logie, right? So, based off of those things, this alliance just seems like a really exclusive club where it either has to implode and shatter, and there's no other way into the alliance.
Yeah, and the way Survivor is designed, you can't be honest all the way to the end. You have to betray and deceive at some point in some capacity, even if it's yourself that you're deceiving. Someone must be deceived. And
even if it's yourself?
Yeah.
Like in what way? Expand on that.
You convince yourself that it's like the old Michael Jordan trick where you convince yourself that somebody's out to get you before you were out to get them. And then it makes it okay to slit their throat because they were probably going to do it to you anyways, because and that's,
it's not a lie if you believe it.
Correct.
Right. No, but you're right. Like in David's position, if he wants to get all the way to the end, he's going to face a crossroads where he makes one move and he's shattering his integrity in some people's eyes, or he makes a completely different move and he's breaking his integrity in a different group of people's eyes. And that just is the toughness of the game. That's why it's designed super well. But I think that's why people who are more on the villainous side have more free reign to just, like, whatever, I'll just do what I need to do and maybe have an easier time with it.
Yeah. And I mean, first time players, especially if you haven't watched every single season, you do go in and make these connections and think, you know what, it's going to be easier to not vote anybody out that I like and try to do that as long as possible. And I think that's where David's at right now. I think Joe's there. Let's talk about Mary and Say. Are they going to come back together? Or Mary doesn't want to work with Say anymore, is what we gathered from last time. Yeah. Is there a world where they come back together? I would want to see them together again. Will we get that?
I was obsessed with that sequence that, like, when Say had a confessional saying that she was so happy to see Mary. Here we go. This is the unlikely duo that's going to run the season. And then cut to Mary. Even the music changed. And Mary's like, oh my God, please not Say. So that was super funny. Like, and when you played Survivor, did you have any like duo that they remind you of at all? Where there's just like this dysfunctional disparity with how they've but they have stayed in the game up to this point together.
I mean, Sierra and myself in Tocantins.
Okay.
Where, we were just like at each other. Probably every season. Blood versus Water. maybe not so much, but yeah, for sure. Seasons are like lots
Yeah.
of seasons are like this, where there's two people battling. For you, who was it? Was it Genevieve and
Rachel and Genevieve
Rachel?
had a big
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
rivalry, but they never wanted to be on the same page. But I don't
yeah,
know. It was a different dynamic because I think that they had so much mutual self-respect. It kind of grated on everybody else. There was a scene
yeah.
in the finale where they were talking each other up in the end game. And everyone's like, "What the heck is like? Are we
About
chopping
one
liver
of
here?
them
Like
was
we're
going to win.
literally
Yeah,
listening to you." Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. They were arguing.
So,
They were like, "If I don't win, you'll win."
Yeah. Right. They were doing that. They were with
Yeah.
all love to Rachel and Genevieve, but with Mary and Say, no, it's really fascinating. But it just goes to show that Bula, they're so dysfunctional. You know, when there's a disaster tribe in the new era, at the silver lining is that the people who are left have been voting together and they're on the same page and they have the ability to navigate a merge situation together. But the Green Tribe, they came in with the lowest numbers and the most dysfunction, and so it just puts them all really, really in a on bad footing. But I think Mary's in a better spot, obviously, because she had that swap tribe and they seemed to like her. So you have to look at that. If you're Mary, she's more of a free agent, but she had sort of better connections on the Lagi 2.0 tribe, and she's like where most other people are. They just have to find a way to crawl into the power structure and sort of infiltrate it from there. But I don't know. With I've been enjoying as a
Yeah.
TV character, and she is one of those players who comes out of the gate swinging. And what's interesting is that gave her power in the start of the game, and she was able to dictate so many of these votes on the original Bula tribe. However, it's almost like she expended all of that in the pre-merge because now she gets to the merge and she has a certain reputation that everyone seems to be buying into because she's the other person left on the outs. And it's kind of like it goes to show the dangers of moving too hard too fast at the start, because now it just feels like her game is blown up and she's going to have to completely pivot to recover her position. But I don't know if she's the type of player who wants to pivot or can,
We were thinking she would be able to, but as the season is progressing, I feel like she's not. I feel like she thinks she is for some reason. She's like, "Oh, I've been playing it cool. Oh, no, yeah,
Right.
I'll let other people decide." And then she'll just start spouting out names because she can't help herself, which I love.
Yeah.
I love that character. I think she's so great. It's hilarious to keep watching her do that. Chrissy, what's going on? We didn't see a lot of her this past episode. We saw a little bit more of her the episode before when it was her and Say at each other a little bit. Is she going to get the invisible treatment like the moms from some of the other seasons? We got the Heathers and who else was another one? I think there were 2 seasons in a row like that. You can't even remember.
Yeah,
that's how.
But so the thing with Chrissy is, she is getting that treatment in the edit, which is, it's not what you want to see, because I would love to get more of her perspective, at least her understanding of where she's at in the game. Because if you get that from every single player, then you have a really rich and complex understanding of all the dynamics. So I wish we could see more from her. But the thing that she has that maybe some of these other free agent straggler type players don't is that she was in a big power alliance on her original tribe, this SIVA 4. We haven't really checked in with them. Like, I don't know what the state of that is, but it seemed like she was really in with Kyle and David. And who was the fourth in that
was
one?
Was it Camilla? Or was
Camilla,
it
right.
I think it was Camilla.
It was definitely Camilla, right? So if that SIVA 4 is still a thing, obviously that gives Kyle and David even more ammunition, even more options. But that is at least a tether to the power. And, if Chrissy could play her cards right, she has a bit more safety than some of these other people. But we did not see them check in, at least like explicitly. So at least she has that. And she built maybe something a little bit with Cedric on that chaotic Bianca vote.
The guy who, for some reason, dictates how everybody goes, even though he doesn't want to or even know that he's able to do it.
Cedric is having he's having a journey that is probably the last thing he ever expected. I do not
He's
think he came
winning
in.
the World Series of poker without having to bluff. That's currently what he's doing.
He
And
is
he
a
doesn't realize it.
chaos king. He's a chaos king. And he did not, I don't think he foresaw that. And it's so funny. And again, I can relate to Cedric because it's
Yeah.
so funny to be in Survivor and have a vision of how your journey might go, how you might play the game. And then you wake up at like partway through the game and you're like, this is not how I thought it would go. Like this, I am not having the experience that I would have envisioned in my head. The best
Yeah.
thing you can do in that scenario is to be highly present and take account of how things have gone, where you are, how you have been playing, because you learn a lot about yourself out there. And if you are present to the moment, like it can, like speaking for me, I had so much fun the second half of the game because I was just more in the moment, and I've just completely shed any sort of expectations I had about how the Survivor experience was going to go, and I was just kind of playing round to round, and that's really how you have to do it. And I hope that for Cedric, and but he is an uphill battle, I think.
Yeah, he does have an uphill battle. That is interesting. The Siva 4, the Power Alliance from original Siva. I think we're gonna see him come back. I think they're gonna come back together in some capacity.
Yeah.
I
Well,
feel
Kyle,
like
he's
they're
all
not
about
done.
playing options, right? He's not all in on the Power Six. So what's the other thing he's got cooking? It's that, and that's really good because that folds in Camilla. So they have this side alliance where they're in that together, and that just it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
At the final 12 now, Kyle does feel like at the very center of this Venn diagram, and like
Is
that
it
the
too
path for him
many?
is pretty clear.
I mean, is it too many options at a point though? Because eventually you have
It's
to
when
go against somebody,
it's when
and they're
you're
going to take
unwilling
it
to
hard.
slam the door on the options. If you are
Yeah.
unwilling to slam the door on the options at the right time, then it's a problem. But if he can help, as soon as Andy said that, I thought Kyle needs to do is stick with the integrity or the honesty group while
Yeah.
protecting Camilla and Chrissy, whittle it down a little bit, get some of these stragglers out of there. And then when the time comes, pull in Chrissy and Camilla to flip the votes and start targeting the rest of the integrity group.
Yeah. So he does have those options, and that does sound like a good game plan. So what Kyle needs to face is the fact that someone in his position has to be cutthroat when it comes time to making those decisions. He pulled off a great move, but it was against someone who was against him and not with him, right? And so does he have the ability to look at the tribe dynamics and be like, okay, this person trusts me with all of their heart and it's time for them to go. And that's the give and take of being in a power position like this. But we'll see if he has it in him.
I think one thing that's interesting too is when you say that, Kyle is given the pass, I think, because he can go back and say, Joe, Shaheen, you guys were going to vote me out. I have no, sure, of course I said I was with you because you were going to vote me out. You tried to vote me out and it didn't work, but you were going to vote me out. And I think that's enough. I think if you can justify to them that, oh, they did a thing first or they gave you reason to jump, then it's totally fine. What's harder is someone like Joe jumping when he was given no reason to jump whatsoever. That's really hard to justify to people who believe that you are being loyal to them.
Yeah. And Joe, I mean, he's another player in a really, really strong position, but like these other players who are in power right now, they have a lot of hard decisions to make in the future because with Joe, this relationship with Eva is so public and it's so known. And I think they're going to be a known quantity for the rest of this game. And so from my perspective, it seems that he is all the more willing to go all the way to the end with her and whoever wins the game. But that just, it does make it tough basically for him to keep his eyes on the prize. If he wants to win the game, right, he's going to have to really sort of figure out how he wants the end game to go down. And if he's going to truly stick with Eva this entire time. And I mean, Eva faces a similar issue. But when things are so emotionally laden and there's so much public, attention there, he's another person. Like, he can't just, because he does have a lot of connections. He's got a connection to Shaheen, for example. He's got a connection to everyone in that alliance. Can he be cutthroat as well? I think they're all going to face this question. Whereas a season like 9, it was very fluid, and I think by the final 10 or so, everyone's like, "Well, I pulled off the blind side and like cut someone's throat," and it was just kind of a den of thieves, and morals were not talked about.
But then we get to what Ryman said yesterday to us, was that if everybody is a liar and a cheater, then it kind of negates everything, because you just go in knowing that you can't trust anybody. Like, you can sit in those final 10 or the final 5 and be like, they betrayed me at some point. Everyone's betrayed everybody at some point. So you just expect betrayal, and it doesn't hit as hard as these people who have sworn to each other that they will not betray one another.
For sure.
That's going to be devastating for somebody.
Yeah. It creates a different game environment. Like for 47, like we laid it out, because everyone had felt that, and you felt like there was no connection that was sort of unbreakable. The end game takes a much different shape, where you're just figuring out who you could sit next to, what's the right timing, all of these logical, strategic decisions. Whereas with the way 48 is shaping up, especially if this alliance continues to get a few votes going their way, they're asking all sorts of different questions to themselves. Like, can I really cut this person after swearing myself to them for 20 days? And I love that, in the sense that I think the new era has a reputation for being very cookie cutter, but I think it's really cool. You kind of run the survivor simulation with different people, and like much different stories are being told. And so I find that to be really refreshing and kind of unique about this season. And because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what decisions these players are going to make.
Yeah, I love it too. And I also love the anticipation of the inner conflict that some of these players are going to have with themselves as they have to make hard decisions. Before we leave, Riley, we already did our Riley's reads yesterday for us three, Ashleigh, myself, and you, but let's hear it from Andy. What do we have?
Well, Andy, I'm curious who your winner pick would be right now.
Oof. That's a good question. All right, here's my winner pick. It's someone I didn't talk about as much, but I actually have a really, really good feeling about Camilla. And I think that she is in a really, really good position. So she is not part of this power structure, this power six, although she has got close connections with it, right? But if it does implode, if a first move is made, she is in a prime position to work her relationship with Kyle and navigate it and get to the end with a lot to say about, her intentionality throughout the game. So I am definitely part of the Camilla-tary. I am all in. She's super, super cool. I've been loving her this season, and I think she's such a lethal player. If I can think about a recent example, so Omer from Survivor 42 is in a pretty similar situation in the merge, where he was perceived as being one of the outsiders, where in reality he was a person in power, and he milked that. And he really, really took advantage of his relationships with people inside and outside of the power structure. And if Camilla could pull off something similar, which I see, she's already done amazing stuff. Like Operation Get On was really, really impressive. It really was. So she's got the chops, she's got the positioning, she's got the awareness, she's got the connection with Kyle. If anything happens to like the power six, or if a move is made on Kyle, that's someone that's out in front of her. But if they want to make a move together, they're also in a really, really good high leverage position. So give me Camilla.
Okay. We like it. I like that.
Yeah, I like Camilla a lot. The thing I'm worried about with her, though, is that this Integrity Alliance vocalized last episode that they were like, we don't want a puzzler to win. We want to get kind of the strategists out. And when I look at the remaining cast right now, it's like she's the one that screams strategist puzzler. And so I actually think it'll put Kyle in a tough position too if somebody is like, well, hey, if our goal is to get rid of the strategist puzzlers, Camilla should be target number one.
That's true, but I think she does have the connections to kind of
She
keep
has
her
like
out of
enough of an in.
harm's way. Yeah. And I
Kyle,
do think
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there's a lot to be said about being 5'1". You're just going to be underestimated. You know what I mean? You're not, even though David is trying to flip the script and sort of rethink who should be a
That's
target,
not a-
which is, again, to his credit. I do want to say that.
It's not an old
He
idea
is-
though either. It's not an
Right,
old idea.
right.
You get those big guys together and you're like, look it, they always start targeting the big guys. Let's try not doing that this time. It's yeah.
But he is incentivized to do that. Whereas, like, when I was looking at the cast in the preseason, you don't pick David and Joe to win because you just feel like they are going to be those expendable shields, right, at the merge.
Yes.
And so that is to his credit. But anyway, like, despite his attempts to do that, I just think Camilla's built to slip under the radar when she needs to. And I think that's going to, that's going to be a huge advantage.
I hope so. I'd love to see it. We also got the snippet of her from next episode being like, we need to frame Shaheen. That was her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, well, is this alliance kind of already falling apart? And or is it some like framing within a framing? I don't know.
Ooh,
Camilla's
layers.
mind works on levels that I'm like, that may not have been as simple as we saw.
Can't wait to watch it. I cannot wait.
Andy, can you also give us who you think will go home next episode?
Yes. Well, it could go a number of different ways, obviously, but I think everyone who's not in that alliance is just a sitting duck right now. So Say caught a lot of votes. From my understanding, that was like a big split between Charity and Say, and people are ready to just send Say out. Someone even articulated that they wanted to send her out before the jury, and this will be the last time to do that. So that's one possibility. But you never know. For this alliance to work, the power alliance to work, they need to start negotiating, what order to send these targets in. It could just be like this sort of subtle political negotiation that could send home Chrissy, for example, as collateral, depending on, what order people want things to go. But it's what I would love to see is a lot of these people realizing that they don't have strings to pull right now and banding together out of self-interest at this sort of pivotal stage. But give me, it could, I would say either Say, although I want her to stick around for a bit.
Yeah.
I do. I want her to
Me too.
I want her to make the jury. I really do. So, but she's my pick right now.
Did that come up on your season? The like, hey, who do we send home as the last pre-juror because we don't want them sitting there?
I think that it definitely helped propel the Rome vote for sure.
No one wanted him on the jury. There's like too much of a wild card.
There were certain people who definitely did not want him on the jury.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as big a discussion because at that period of time, it is really sort of abstract. You don't know how the rest of the game is going to go. You don't know what they're going to think. They could be the most chaotic personality ever, but they have to vote for somebody, right? So I think that's kind of, in many cases, just being a little bit too cute and being, too thinking about day 26 when you're just at the merge.
Yep.
Yeah. I think if you're in the Power Alliance, you have to look at who's going to be the biggest threat down the line, who's maybe got the chops to pull something together, maybe who's someone threatening your spot with your number one, that type of thing, and go from there. And then the negotiation does start where someone brings up Camilla and Kyle goes, let's not do her yet. She kind of trusts me. We can use her as an outlier if we need to. How about, and it goes back and forth a little bit. And that might happen
kind of
a couple
subtle
times.
thing, those subtle discussions can tear an alliance apart because all of a sudden you feel like you are in such a, safe space and you're like, okay, who should go home next? But as soon as you catch someone defending someone a little bit too closely,
Too much.
you're like, well, why are you doing that? Isn't it your turn to lose a number? And those type of power struggles can just break up an alliance in a day.
Yeah. And it will give these people reason to say, oh, okay, well, he wasn't willing to, so he's not really part of the Honesty Alliance. He's got his own thing. He's done because he's not fully honest, and they totally justify it to themselves. Yeah, that's mental gymnastics. Riley, what else we got?
That's all from me tonight.
Okay. Andy, thank you so much for taking time from your family vacation in Korea. You could be doing so many more awesome things than this, but we are on the ringer, which is very cool. Not everybody gets to be here, Andy.
This is another dream come true.
Man, it just keeps getting better, right?
It really does. How cool is this? Shout out
thank you so much.
Shout out to all of your colleagues at the Ringer. I will keep listening.
Okay.
But anyway, super fun to talk with you. And I really can't wait to see how this season shakes out. I think it's another good one. And I think this sort of the last couple years of the new era have really been a good streak. I think, say what you will about the new era, right? But I think as soon as they turned to 90 minutes, I think that fixed a lot of the issues that people were having. And I think this is another banger. And that just makes me really happy about the state of Survivor, going into 50 and beyond. So I'm just really happy to see it.
I agree. I've been enjoying it. I think we got to keep the twists and turns coming, and that honesty, integrity, power group cannot get to the end. Otherwise, it's too dull of unless they go through like a dip where they're the underdogs and then come back. That'll do it on The Pod Has Spoken for the Merge Extravaganza. Again, Andy, thank you. Riley, thank you for usually being here. Ashleigh, thank you for always having my back, being here, making us sound and look amazing. Until next week, everybody, see ya.